Hey folks, welcome back, and this is the continuation of building a Midwest kit, Pitts S1. This is a vintage kit. It was originally designed in the late 60s. I think this kit was made in the late 80s, and today we're going to talk about parts C and D. And as I go through this entire build, folks, I am going to modify a couple of things in it, like servo placement and stuff like that, but I'm trying to build this 100% stock. So what we're going to do today, folks, is part C is pretty long step. Part D is very simple. It's putting in the landing gear blocks. But one of the things I want everybody to realize as we build this kit is back in the day, you had to study these drawings for days. Or weeks. Because, folks, there's a lot of things in this kit that just sometimes doesn't line up with the parts that they actually supplied you, where you're going to have a little bit of skill to understand that, yeah, they were slowly modifying this kit as we went along. Now, in part D here, and I popped that in the bottom part here, the bottom right-hand part, essentially it's just the landing gear blocks. It's a very simple little step, but I wanted to combine these two steps C and D together because a video just on step D would be really, really silly because it'd only be like 3 minutes long. So these are essentially the parts that we're going to need. If you watch the past video, you know that some of these die cuts didn't work good, and some of the stuff I just have to clearly cut out. So I got out the bandsaw. Folks, one of the things about cutting with a bandsaw is just taking your time, okay? And you really, really want to just let the saw blade do the work. And I've always loved using a bandsaw. I think it's very therapeutic. But you want to really just take your time, and you can get it almost like laser cutting. This is the die cut part that didn't go all the way through to the other side of this plywood, which was very frustrating back in the day if you didn't have a bandsaw. Luckily, I've got a lot of tools. So I ended up cutting out all these parts and cleaning them up a little bit with a sanding block, and just want to make sure that they, were perfect. So here are all the parts laid out that we're going to end up gluing together on this fuselage center section. I'm not showing the sides right now, but folks, at the very top of this, you see those little like pyramid shapes or those triangles. Those are little like crutches that are used to hold parts square. You want to make sure you build a square airplane, okay? And you want to make sure you trial fit everything and make sure everything goes together well. The more time you take in making sure these parts are perfect and the plane is square, the better the plane is going to fly in the air. Okay. And then I marked center lines on everything so I could make sure I'm properly lining it up with the fuselage as I start to glue stuff together. And you want to make sure, folks, you just take your time. I'm going to say that all the time in this, but one thing about building kits back in the day, it taught you patience. And if you want to really have a beautiful flying airplane, it's got to be straight. One thing I do like about foamies nowadays are that most of them are pretty straight, so they're good flying airplanes. But man, when we used to build these planes back in the day, if you didn't take your time, you'd be trimming, and folks, it was just a cluster. You want to make sure everything goes very well. Now, believe it or not, just doing all of this right here took me about an hour and 20 minutes. And it was just me being very meticulous and taking my time. I also want to point out right here something that's very frustrating. When you get one of these sheets, it means they have modified the kit or made a change. If you look at F3 there, it was not marked and it's not drilled. This is what the leading edge of the wing plugs into on the aircraft. And it's a very important part. You don't want to install it and then drill it. Now here, folks, is where I put the, what would that be? The left side of the fuselage, right side with it upside down, but it's technically the left side of the fuselage. You want to just take your time and glue things, make sure everything lines up, use clamps, use tape, use whatever it takes to put it together. I am using yellow glue, what I call yellow glue, to put the sides of the airplane on, okay? And you want to mark the sides where the formers are going to go. And you just, folks, you want to make sure everything lines up. And then I pre-glue everything using what I call yellow glue. That could be carpenter's glue or the aliphatic glue or however you say it. But it's a little bit stronger glue than the Speedy Bond from what I found out. Also, don't be afraid to tape the living hell out of the thing to make sure everything is snug and held together. And I was extremely excited when everything dried and I took it apart. And it was just straight as can be, folks. It's really super exciting. So when we think of F3 there, see that right in the middle? And I told you earlier I had to mark F3 and make sure it lines up. This is where you want to study the drawing, because if you notice, F3 has some notches in the upper right-hand corner, but in the drawing there's no notches. So you've got to really dig in and try to understand what this looks like. Again, I'm showing you a picture in the upper right hand of what F3 looks like in a section view. But this F3, folks, if you had never built a kit, you'd be very frustrated, because you would be like, well, why are there little tabs on it but not in the drawing? So we're going to get into part D now. And part D is just putting in the landing gear blocks, folks. And but you're also going to see some of the other parts of the airplane I just talked about, like F3 and stuff like that. But again, take your time and read the directions too. Okay. So these are the parts for the landing gear block. Another thing is there was 4 triangle pieces, and I know where the other 2 triangle pieces go, but there's some things, folks, that from my experience in building, you don't need to put them in exactly the way it was shown. Now, if you're going to build one of these per the plans, stick straight with it, okay? But my experience shows me that my experience tells me I can do those triangle blocks, the extra 2, not the primary 2 that you see right here, a little bit different. Now, I want you also look, you can see F3 there where I drilled it, and it's got those little notches. In the drawings, that F3 is parallel with the bottom of the fuselage there. And if you don't really study the plans and understand really what's going on, I think this would be very, very frustrating to somebody doing this for the first time. Okay. Another thing is, all your wood, you want to make sure you either use a belt sander or use your bandsaw and set the angle you're going to cut. But you want everything to fit very, very tight, because the tighter it fits, the bigger the gluing surface is that you're going to be gluing these blocks in with. Okay. And folks, look, I know everybody has different techniques in building airplanes, so I know my way is not the only way, but I just want people to realize that, you really got to take your time and really study those drawings, know those drawings. And then as you start to glue all this stuff in, and also on the drawings, read some of the little notes, because some of them tell you to tack glue and other ones say permanently glue things in. And the reason you're tack gluing is you might be able to need to get back in there to put in the fuel tank, or you might need to get back in there and do things inside the fuselage. I love blue tape. Okay. It doesn't damage the wood. It holds really, really tight. And I think it just works perfect. And folks, one thing that I miss about building kits is just the amount of time it takes with my sanding block and getting things to fit perfect, and just taking my time. I'm starting to realize how much I miss kit building. So here is basically the fuselage where I thought I was 99% ready to go to the next step, but I figured I'd look at the drawings and to review it, and I realized I had forgotten one piece. And that piece is the rear block that will have 2 holes drilled in it that hold the wing down. And those won't be drilled until the wing's done. And that's what you're seeing right here. So you need to go back and look at the drawings, as I almost skipped this entire step right here, or this part. I didn't notice. It was actually in part C, and I didn't notice it until I went back and reviewed my drawings. So the next step we're going to do in the next video is going to be part E. And that's where we get to build the cabanes that hold the top wing on. We get to basically get the kit ready to go to the next step. But here's one frustrating thing for me. Notice in E, the very first thing it says is add tail group. Nowhere in this does it tell me how to build the rear stabilizer and vertical stabilizer. So I'm just going to put it together, glue it, screw it, and be done with it. Okay. So there's some things you're going to have to know what to do without having explicit instructions. Okay. So that's it, folks. See you next time. Rock on. Have a great day. Please like and subscribe.